Welcome to the latest of my Inside Tracks. Today I'm going to explore the journey of the communicator planet, but also the planet of precision, Mercury, through the watery sign of Pisces. This begins on the 14th of February and goes through to the 3rd of March, 18 days based on Universal. I'm going to share with you some Mercury themes, but also what we can expect in the sign of Pisces. Mercury is exalted as well as being the ruler of the sign of Virgo. So with Pisces being opposite, it's not only detrimented, it's also in its fall. So in terms of essential dignities, we get a double whammy. What does that mean? Does it mean this next 18 days is going to be seriously challenging, or are there opportunities? I'd like to tease out those opportunities with you because I feel there are some. I'm going to share the event chart based on natal but also solar perspective, so we can all get a clearer understanding of where the impact will be. And then I'm going to share with you some upcoming aspects which are set to be very influential. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. If you're new here, it's great to have your company. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please do share them. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for all your interaction and views. If you've yet to sub, please help the channel to thrive by clicking that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. We have found that around about 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. So if you could support the channel, that would be great. You can also, underneath this video, download a factoid all about Mercury in Pisces, both from an astrological but also a mythological viewpoint. So that's really exciting. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, I am a consultant astrologer. Please check out my testimonials below. If you'd like to get your personal horoscope reports through to the end of February to celebrate my new website at www.patrickarundell.com, you can get those half price. Or if you'd like to have an astrology video reading, you can have 2 questions answered, have your year ahead done, or if your birthday's upcoming, your solar return. Please see the links below for more. So, Mercury, the planet which is very much to do with our interaction with others. The winged messenger, or Hermes in Greek mythology, is the intermediary between the underworld and the gods. Now, through its rulership of Gemini, it's definitely nimble, dexterous, agile, flirty. We could argue that Mercury is androgynous. I have seen some astrologers referring to Mercury as a male, but it definitely has a whimsical energy and can enjoy a degree of gossip. But through that rulership of Virgo, which is an earth sign, is much more to do with analytical precision, getting into the details, but also in some ways providing services that have some kind of practical dimension and some kind of tangible outcome. So it's not all Gemini energy that we should link to Mercury. We need to consider the sign of Virgo too. But as I mentioned, Mercury in Pisces is in its fall and also in its detriment. But it's a great opportunity over this 18 days for all of us to access our imagination. If you are someone who's got a particular interest in poetry or music or the arts, I feel that you could find that your energies can actually be supercharged through this period of time. Now, we are reading about a lot of new modern techniques that are going to be applied through science, which actually have their resonance in the past. And one of those that comes up for me is telepathy. So if we're thinking about something, we can have a connection. How often has the phone rang just when we were thinking about someone else? That's something that many of us have experienced. So it does give us an ability, Mercury in Pisces, to be very intuitive when it comes to our discussions to others. However, that instinct does in some ways perhaps gets compromised by the potential for subjectivity, because the logic of Mercury in the sign of Virgo is definitely compromised somewhat. So we could find ourselves perhaps assuming some things or even daydreaming. And because Mercury also in the sign of Pisces can point towards the need to be a bit more reflective, we might find ourselves wanting to just squirrel ourselves away. But it can lead, Mercury in Pisces, to people perhaps getting involved in perhaps idle chit-chat is one way of putting it, perhaps making some assumptions that may not necessarily be correct. Now, just some other themes that come up for me with Mercury in the sign of Pisces. It can help us to actually be very empathetic and compassionate. But the sign of Pisces, which is co-ruled by both Jupiter, the traditional ruler, and also Neptune, is boundaryless in a way. It's like affinity. So what we could find with Mercury in the sign of Pisces is some of the ideas that we've been planning or starting to actuate in the sign of Aquarius, which is very much about the future, may seem in some ways to run out of a little bit of foundation. So they could lose traction. And that could, in some ways, give us another dimension when it comes to the mystical sphere and healing, but much more difficult to focus on the hard and fast details that might be important. So it's vital that we do really concentrate, otherwise mistakes could be made. So on the screen now is the solar event chart, and we can see Mercury in house 12. It's pretty close to the sun. If that was a natal chart, that would be hugely influential. So it's around about just under 4 degrees away, but it's a dissociate conjunction. However, Uranus is also aligned in a square, but again, it's a bit broad. So for me, the most important aspect beyond Mercury's position itself is that of Saturn, also like Mercury in Pisces, but in an almost exact opposition with the moon. So the moon in the sign of Virgo, which Mercury of course rules, is very much about precision, and it suggests that if we don't really concentrate over this next 18 days, there could be ramifications. So Saturn's asking us to take seriously, particularly the past, which the sign of Pisces can be about. It can be our sign of accumulative knowledge, but it also can perhaps be some karma is about to come out. Particularly if we said something in the past, it could come back to haunt us if it wasn't something that was true. So Saturn opposite Moon is a very exacting, a very unforgiving and very precise energy, which does create a little bit of a cooler tone. But what about the event chart from a natal perspective? Well, the ascendant's on the anaretic degree in Gemini, so great for the link to the midheaven and the sun, but that puts Mercury right at the top of the chart. So I feel that Mercury there is pushing us not to retreat, which we can do in terms of our thinking in Pisces, and to make sure that we're staying face out, we're connecting to the world. But Saturn right at the top of the chart suggests that there could be some big demands, especially as the position of the moon in the 4th house is really seeing us wanting to focus perhaps more on our immediate emotional world and perhaps not confront some of those worldly realities. So that's the issue for me there. Once again, it's Saturn opposite the moon that's very interesting. So over this next 18 days, I feel that our emotions could feel somewhat conflicted, and however much we try to keep the communication going, it might not be easy. So we may encounter someone who we feel suppresses us, or in some ways limits us, or in some ways doesn't want to hear our voice. And one of the ways that could come out with Mercury in Pisces is if we do want to share something that is of a more tender, personal or sensitive nature. So we may encounter someone who's a bit brusque. well, they haven't got time for that. And that could be very wounding if you're at that point in your life where something is proven to be rather challenging. So I think we need to be very, very careful about who we open up to over the next few weeks. Doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't do it, but we do need to be selective. Now, I mentioned that there's some big aspects coming. On the 20th of February, challenging right angle between Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, which Mercury rules, and of Mercury in Pisces. So there is some mutual receptivity, but I don't think it's a very good one. Jupiter detrimented in Gemini can itself be a bit gossipy, certainly prone to exaggeration. So I feel that if there is something that you open up about that is rather delicate, someone could inflate what you say quite considerably, blow it out of all proportion, and it could come back in a bit of a challenging manner. So important to be very mindful of who we trust over this next few weeks. But equally, it's important that we don't write a mini-series around an event that may happen for us, that we keep a sense of perspective. Now, on the 25th, exactly, Mercury is going to apply to Saturn. Saturn in the sign of Pisces through to the 26th of May, and from the start of September through to the early part of 2026 is not a great location. It only happens every 29.5 years. But if we think the sign of Pisces is about outcomes and consequences, because it's the 12th zodiac sign, and Saturn governs those things too, it is possible that, as I mentioned before, that something that may have been talked about in the past or enshrined in a document or we agreed to do could in some ways be something that we need to confront in the here and now. Because Mercury can be about quick travel, we may feel a sense of inhibition. There may be something that's tethering us to a demand or responsibility, or we could just feel absolutely, totally exhausted across those few days. But as the month comes to a close and March begins, and Mercury merges with the North Node and also Neptune, the potential to trip the light fantastic in terms of the arts or creativity or anything to do with music can see us absolutely reaching a very high level of frequency. So some magic and mystique can definitely be emerging at that part of the year. I hope that gives you an overview of what Mercury in Pisces represents for the next few weeks. Thank you so much for joining me, and please do check out my new website at www.patrickarundell.com. You can get your daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning by signing up to the subscription. Please see that at the top of the new site.